Chapter 1. The Lost Tourists. Jack and Sarah were lost in San Francisco. They had a map, but it wasn't helping. Jack looked around and saw a tourist information booth. He smiled and pointed. "Look, Sarah, tourist information. We can ask for help." Sarah crossed her arms and shook her head. "You ask, Jack." Jack frowned. "No, you ask. My English isn't very good." Sarah laughed a little. "Your English is better than mine, Jack. You ask." They stood there for a moment, neither of them wanting to talk. Finally, Jack sighed and walked up to the booth. He smiled at the woman behind the desk. "Excuse me," Jack said nervously. "Do you speak English?" The woman, Linda, smiled back. "Yes, I do. How can I help you?" Jack felt relieved. "Thank you. My friend has a question." Sarah's eyes went wide. "What? No, I don't have a question," she whispered. Jack ignored her. "We want to take a tour," he said. Linda nodded. "Which tour? The hop-on, hop-off bus tour, the Golden Gate boat tour, or the Chinatown walking tour?" Jack turned to Sarah. She looked confused. He whispered, "She's asking which tour we want." Sarah blinked and then said, The Golden Gate boat tour." Linda smiled again. "Good choice. We have 2 spots left for tomorrow morning. Does that work for you?" Before Jack could answer, Sarah blurted, "Thank you, goodbye." She grabbed Jack's arm and pulled him away. "Wait," Jack said, laughing. "What's wrong?" Sarah's face turned red. "She talks too fast. I didn't understand anything." Jack smiled. "Come on, Sarah. We need to go back and ask again." Sarah shook her head. "No way. I feel so stupid." Jack sighed. "It's okay. We'll try again." They stood there looking at each other. Jack was already planning how to convince Sarah to go back. They couldn't stay lost forever. Chapter 2. Trying Again. The next morning, Jack and Sarah stood outside the tourist booth again. Sarah looked nervous, biting her lip, while Jack gave her a confident smile. "All right," Jack said. "This time we'll ask slowly. No rush." Sarah nodded but didn't look too sure. "I still feel silly, Jack. What if she talks fast again?" Jack patted her on the shoulder. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." They walked up to the booth, and Linda, the friendly woman from yesterday, smiled at them. "Hello again," Linda greeted them. "Do you want the Golden Gate boat tour?" Jack smiled but leaned closer. "Can you please speak more slowly?" he asked politely. Linda nodded. "Of course. Would you like the Golden Gate boat tour?" Jack nodded, feeling a little more confident now. "Yes, tomorrow morning." Linda's smile grew. "All right, the tour starts at 10 o'clock exactly. Does that work for you?" Jack turned to Sarah, who was nervously twisting her fingers. She nodded quickly. "Yes, 10 is fine." Jack faced Linda again. "Sorry, what time does it start again?" Linda laughed softly. "At 10 o'clock. Wemyss Terrace," Jack repeated. 10 o'clock. Got it. And where does it leave from?" Linda pointed to a spot on the map. "From Pier 43, or you can take the minibus. It leaves from the front gate at 9:45. Jack glanced at Sarah and she looked lost again. He smiled and asked, "Sorry, could you repeat that?" Linda didn't mind at all. The minibus leaves at 9:45 from the front gate, or you can go directly to Pier 43. Sarah, finally catching on, nodded. Okay, I see the sign now, 9:45. Jack smiled at her. See? Not so bad. He turned back to Linda. And when does the tour finish? The boat arrives back at 1 p.m., Linda said, still smiling. Jack nodded. 1 p.m. Okay, that's good. And how much does it cost? $26 per person, Linda replied. Jack did some quick math in his head. So, $52 for two. Linda nodded. That's right. Jack turned to Sarah, who was now looking a bit more relaxed. All right, so 2 tickets for tomorrow morning, please. Suddenly, Sarah spoke up. Do you take credit cards? Linda smiled again. Yes, of course. Jack couldn't help but laugh a little. Sarah smiled back, feeling proud she had asked a question. See? We did it, Jack said, as they took their tickets and walked away. Chapter 3. The Big Day. The next morning, Jack and Sarah stood at the front gate, waiting for the minibus. Sarah was holding her ticket tightly, her nervous energy from the day before finally fading. Jack, as usual, had a wide grin on his face, excited for the adventure ahead. See, Sarah? Everything's going smoothly, Jack said, glancing at his watch. It was 9:40, just a few minutes before the minibus would arrive. Sarah took a deep breath and smiled back. Yeah, I guess you were right. I feel a lot better today. As they waited, Jack couldn't help but tease her. Maybe next time you can ask for the tickets. Sarah rolled her eyes playfully. Don't push your luck, Jack. Right on time, the small white minibus pulled up. The driver hopped out, cheerful and welcoming. Good morning. Off to the Golden Gate boat tour? Jack nodded, and they both climbed aboard. The bus started its short trip to the pier, and as they drove, Sarah gazed out the window, watching the city's famous hills roll by. When they arrived at Pier 43, the boat was waiting, shining brightly in the morning sun. The cool breeze coming off the water felt refreshing, and Sarah started to get excited. They walked toward the boat, handing over their tickets to the smiling crew members. Here we go, Jack said, his voice full of excitement. The boat set off, slowly gliding under the Golden Gate Bridge. Jack was busy taking photos while Sarah stood by the railing, enjoying the view. As the boat moved through the bay, she realized how glad she was that Jack had convinced her to ask about the tour. After about an hour of beautiful views, the boat turned back toward the pier. Sarah leaned toward Jack. You know, this was a good idea after all. Jack grinned, putting away his camera. Told you. Sometimes it's worth asking those awkward questions. As they approached the dock, Sarah gave Jack a playful nudge. Next time, I'll ask. No problem. Jack laughed. Really? We'll see about that. They both laughed as the boat docked, happy they had pushed through the awkwardness. The Golden Gate boat tour turned out to be a memory they would never forget, not because of the sights, but because of how they learned to laugh at their small misunderstandings and enjoy the moment. And as they walked away from the pier, with the wind in their hair and smiles on their faces, Jack was already thinking about their next adventure. Whatever it would be, Sarah would ask the questions next time. Or maybe not.